Hello everyone, good morning and thank you joining me and everyone else on this regular Sunday morning meditation followed by a talk. So as you're all familiar, bring your thoughts, prayers and meditative concentration in generating the right intention that you're going to do the meditation mindfully, thoughtfully, sincerely. For 30 minutes we will do. I'll allow yourself to choose techniques during those 30 minutes, 10 minutes of 3 slots, and you stay very focused, one pointed, calm, abiding, meditative technique. But first we'll do the refuge and 4 immeasurables. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Yete La Dhamma Bhavaja Ajendala Ashare Buddha Uduve Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Yete La Dhamma Bhavaja Ajendala Ashare Buddha Uduve Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Yete La Dhamma Bhavaja Ajendala Ashare Buddha Uduve. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a path of happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, of those near path. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know apart from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know apart from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. So now we'll do the meditation. Sit still, observe the 4S, the stillness of your posture, sincerity of your motivation, serenity of your attention, and the simplicity of all the techniques. Simply to not to forget what to focus, and simply focus one pointedly on that, be that your posture or counting the rounds of breath forward or reverse. Whatever technique you use, make it very serene, clear. That's what you're doing with a good degree of discipline. So I'll let you to observe this. I wouldn't time it by gong in between the 3 slots. You just time yourself to shift from one slot to another in order to increase your own way to master the timing, the technique, and so on. I'll simply ring the bell when the 30 minutes are over. So after the meditation, we have a talk here. Today's topic is Anathapindika in Buddha's life. This is to do with Buddha and his influence, and how many kinds of people was influenced by the Buddha to cause their liberation, both monastics and the laymen, laywomen, and the monks and the nuns. During the 45 years of his ministry after enlightenment, that is between his age 35 and 81, Buddha lived in India and had a huge following of disciples. And all of his disciples could be divided into 4 groups. These 4 groups are usually called for complete Sangha. What makes a complete Sangha? It's a Buddhist monks, Buddhist nuns, laymen disciples, lay women disciples. And so here today we're going to look at the layman disciple, Anathapindika. Often we think that Buddhism is all to do with monks, maybe not so much nuns even, let alone the laymen and laywomen. It is not. Buddhism was supported by all 4 pillars, all 4 pillars. And today we're going to look at the Anathapindika. Anathapindika, everybody should know a little bit about Buddhist history, about the people and what they did during the Buddha's time, and what role they played. Of the 4 members of the Sangha, there are 2 chief monastic disciples that are monks is regarded as Shariputra and Moggallaniputra. Both Shariputra and Moggallaniputra predeceased Buddha. So even though they were really chief disciples, they were only chief disciples during the life of the Buddha, but they didn't do much. So most of these 4 groups of Sangha we are referring to are those who played significant role during the life of the Buddha. So, and 2 chief Buddhist nuns were Arhan Khema and Arhan Upalavana. These were 2 very senior Buddhist nuns who were just as significantly important as were Shariputra and Moggallaniputra. And likewise, Buddha had significant layman disciples and laywomen disciples, like Anathapindika as the chief male disciple, who actually entered and received the arhathood, as well as Visakha as chief female disciples. So to think that only monastics can gain arhathood and layman and laywoman could not is a real problem, because history in ancient Buddhist story tells that many laymen and laywomen disciples Buddha achieved arhathood. So it is probably Mahayana invention to say that women cannot gain enlightenment. They're talking about enlightenment. They're not talking about arhathood. So maybe that's the reason. So if you really look back to all stories of people like Upalavana and Ayakhema and we were talking about Anathapindika as a male disciple. They all were lay people and women and laymen, and they also attend arhathood. So these are all in the sutras. These are not made up by anybody else. So therefore, any Mahayana scriptures or any Buddhist literature, it suggests that you cannot gain enlightenment in female life is a very problematic, and they should be refuted. And we don't want discouraging stories like that. Anyway, so that's not a point of today's talk, but we are today to talk about how who is Anathapindika, we have recognized among the laymen, laywomen, ordained monk, and ordained women disciples. We are going to discuss today Anathapindika. His name Anathapindika is famous because he is regarded as most generous benefactor, not only to the Buddha and his monastic order, but also to the general public. He was particularly generous to those who were poor, destitute, and unprotected. And that is why his name is Anatha. Anatha means those who are unprotected. Pindaka means giver of alms. So he fed the poor, destitute, and unprotected even before he heard about Buddha. So it's not just that he was converted by the Buddha to practice dana. So we mustn't think that dana is only a Buddhist thing. Dana, practicing of generosity, predates Buddha Dharma. So there was a generosity, huge amount of generosity outside Buddhism, before Buddhism, and so the generosity was very great. And Anathapindika is particularly became famous in the Buddhist circles after he made a significant donation by building the Jetavana monastery. Jetavana monastery in Shravasti, where he built it at a great cost, where later on he was able to offer a shelter for Buddha and his disciples, where Buddha spent 25 rainy season retreats. Being a very wealthy merchant, he used his wealth very carefully and for the welfare of others in need, even though he was later on swindled by others. He was a very pious person, strictly observing precepts and practicing. And he attained first noble stage of stream entry just by meeting with the Buddha. He became very knowledgeable and insightful about Buddha's teaching and was even able to advise others on matters related to Buddhist teachings and participated in religious discussion with disciples of other religious traditions. He became a significant layman Buddhist teacher. So that's just a general introduction to who Anathapindika was and became. Let's look at his family background. Anathapindika was born in a very wealthy merchant family in Shravasti. Shravasti is one of the 8 holy sites in Indian Buddhist geography. His father's name was Sumana, who was also known as Sumana Sethi. And Sumana was already a wealthy man. So Anathapindika's birth name was Sujata. Sujata means giver, who is a giver of good. But because of his generosity towards the poor, destitute, and unprotected, even before he met the Buddha, he earned the nickname Anathapindika. Anathapindika was his nickname, which mainly became his main name, but his official name was Sujata. He became very wealthy on top of the wealth that he inherited from his father, and he certainly was the most wealthiest man in Shravasti during Buddha's time. And Anathapindika was married to Punna Lakhana. Punna is a girl whose name means one who had the merit, whose brother was another wealthy merchant in Rajgriha. So the brother-in-law of Anathapindika had also become a disciple of Buddha and is known to have built several kutis, meditation huts for the Buddha and his disciples. This is before Anathapindika came into the scene as a Buddhist and Buddhist benefactor. Punna herself, a very religious and generous person, was because she is Anathapindika's wife, she managed and participated in her husband's kind of wealth and generosity and charity to feed the poor, destitute, and so on. So every day, hundreds of Buddhist monks visited their home and offer alms. And Punna was always amazing. Her housewife made everyone welcome, and fed everyone and gave generously, almost like to the envy of others. They were not just wealthy, but they were so generous. The whole family was like that. So anyway, Anathapindika had 3 daughters. So this is why we will want to talk about householders who can do Dharma without renouncing all, but instead can focus on Dharma. Anathapindika had 3 daughters and 1 son. The 3 daughters were Mahasubhadra, Chulasubhadra, and Sumana. They were all very much influenced their parents and engaged in Dharma and spiritual practice because their father had entered the Buddhist spiritual path. And so the elder daughter Mahasubhadra and the Chulasubhadra had attained also first noble stage of stream entry, while the youngest daughter Sumana had attained the second noble stage of once returner. While the 2 older daughters were married and had families, Sumana did not get married and is believed to have died by starving herself due to extreme monastic kind of asceticism and coupled with extreme practice of that made herself mentally very depressed about the sufferings of the world. So depression was not recent, and the recent 21st century illnesses. When practitioners push themselves too hard, they can become so depressed. So one should be a little bit careful. It is recorded that she was reborn as a Deva and in the celestial realm of Tushita heaven. Anathapindika's son name is Kala, and he of course became a businessman like his father. He showed no interest in visiting Buddha or to listen to the Buddha's teaching. He was in fact a little jealous that his father was spending so much wealth to the offering to the Buddha and so on. Anyway, so it is believed that Anathapindika, the father, devised a plan to entice his rather reluctant son to visit the Buddha and listen to the teaching by offering money as a reward. Because he knew his son liked money. He said, if you go to receive teaching, I'll give you more. First he was offered money to visit Buddha, and on a second donation he was offered money if he listened to the sermon. So first bribing him to visit the Buddha, second is bribing him to listen to the teaching, and then you wouldn't believe, when he heard the Buddha, he remembered this verse in Buddha's teaching, and that stuck on his mind, However, when he visited the Buddha on the second occasion, he is said to have realized teaching and attained the first stage of stream entry. Kala, the son, was married to Sujata, who happened to be the youngest sister of Vishaka, who she is the most wealthy benefactress of the Buddha. She was the female most celebrated lay woman disciple of the Buddha. So, so of course, if Sujata married married her daughter, of course, you see the connection, family connection was good. Being a member of two very wealthy families, she has remained an arrogant person with difficult, cruel behavior towards her family members as well as domestic workers. So that is the Kala has Kala's wife was a very cruel wife. Cruel wife. She was very difficult to deal with. She was hard on her servants. Anathapindika had another son named Saddha, who was ordained as a monk by his brother, uncle Arhat Subhuti. Because Arhat Subhuti is Anathapindika's brother, who was later converted to Buddhism after Anathapindika offered his spark to the Buddha. So how did Anathapindika met Buddha? Because it's good to know that Anathapindika had all these family relationships and he's got 5 children and wealthy and all of that. But how did he meet the Buddha? Remember, his wife came from Rajgriha, who's daughter of the wealthiest man there. And while traveling in the neighboring state, Magadha is the name of the district of Bodh Gaya. When he traveled there for business activities, Anathapindika stopped in Rajgriha to pay visit to his brother-in-law, because that's his wife's home. Whenever he visits his brother-in-law, he receives a warm and cordial welcome. But this time, it did not happen, as his brother-in-law and all the others in the family were so busy decorating the household, making incredible preparation for a big occasion. When he asked whether they were making preparation for a big offering, a wedding, or a visit by a king, his brother-in-law informed him that the Enlightened One has been invited to the house for the following day. So when Anathapindika heard the word Enlightened One, something like an old memory arose in his mind and asked his brother-in-law again and again whether he said the word Enlightened One. When the reply came in the affirmative, Anathapindika became so elated and very excited and wanted to go and see the Enlightened One immediately. He doesn't want to wait tomorrow. He didn't realize the Enlightened One was around. However, as it was not proper time to visit the Buddha, and the Buddha was due to arrive at the brother-in-law's house next day, he went to bed. He could not sleep properly through his excitement, having woken up 3 times believing it was dawn. Finally, he woke up even before the red light and set in and started walking towards the Jetavana. Jetavana is cool grove where the Buddha was residing. Cool grove is where you go as Buddhist pilgrim to Rajgriha, where there is called cool grove is near vicinity of Bodh Gaya. However, it was too dark to find his way to the forest monastery, and due to the darkness, he became frightened and decided to turn back. It is said that at the very moment a friendly spirit advised him not to turn back and illuminate the area so that he could continue to walk towards Jetavana. So he had a divine assistant, yeah? When he arrived at Jetavana, he saw the Buddha walking up and down in silence as if Buddha was expecting his arrival. Buddha said, "Come, Sujata," which astonished Anathapindika because everyone used to call him Anathapindika rather than by his birth name, which was seldom used. And also because this was an unexpected visit by him and the Buddha has never seen him before. Now he was convinced that the person in front of him was none other than the enlightened one. So he went and venerated the Buddha and asked whether the Buddha had slept well. Did you sleep well, Your Holiness? It's a very naive way to ask, as enlightened one has difficult nights. As recorded in the Sujata Sutra of the Samyukta Nikaya, which is a collection of Buddhist discourses, the Buddha responded, saying, always indeed he sleeps well. The Brahmin, means the monk, who is fully quenched, who does not cling to sensually pleasures, cool at heart is the acquisition, having cut off at all attachment, having removed all desire from the heart. The peaceful one indeed sleeps well, for he has attained peace of mind. So that was the answer. At this very first meeting, Buddha began delivering the teaching to Anathapindika in what is called the graduated instruction or step-by-step method of teaching. So the graduate path to enlightenment is not a Tibetan thing, how can the Tibetans invent anything, Why? The Buddha taught Anathapindika graduate path enlightenment because Anathapindika was starting as a wealthy businessman. So obviously he has to guide it from the step by step. So therefore, let us not think that all these Mahayana claims and Tibetan claims are not really substantiated. The graduate path to enlightenment was taught by the Buddha. To whom? Anathapindika. Now this is very old. This is not 11th century. People think it's only happened because Atisha came to Tibet. Give me a break. Buddhist story goes back hundreds of years. More than 10 centuries before Atisha. Tibetans cannot remember because they never learned about it. They only hear the stories of how Atisha went to Indonesia and went for a teaching that never existed in India, and then met this amazing teacher in Indonesia, brought teaching. This is the fable. This is the fable story. This is the legend that people are telling. The problem is because we didn't really read the early stories of the people in the life of the Buddha. Remember, we have Theravadan literature, Pali literature, Pali texts translated from Pali into English, and in Tibetan Buddhist texts also. It's very clear. The Anathapindika story is all over the place in Tibetan literature, but because they are stacked up as holy books up in the shrine and nobody reads it, until the earliest recent version of post-Atisha stories, the Tibetans always tell that as if this graduate path enlightenment is new and so on. That's not true. This is why I felt so important that we as a Buddhist should know the story of people in life of the Buddha and how teachings came about. So, the Buddha therefore started teaching about dana, first of all, and its benefits, followed by cultivating the discipline, self-discipline, and their benefit. Then the Buddha spoke about the heavenly pleasures as a result of wholesome actions, and the dangers of sensual pleasures, followed by virtue of renunciation. See, he talked about renunciation, he talked about generosity. So these are all sort of, renunciation means that you have to renounce samsara and pleasure, and then you will gain rebirth and higher rebirth or liberation. See, these are all taught in the graduate path enlightenment. So this actually was taught by the Buddha to Anathapindika. Yeah, so of course Buddha would have known the actual sequence of the teachings. He talks about the first truth of suffering. If you don't hear about the truth of suffering, where is the renunciation? Why the first noble truth of suffering is taught? Because that is exactly what you have to renounce, and the suffering and its causes. So you can see the very teaching of the Buddha itself is graduate path to enlightenment, not some invention of later illustrious Bengali master like Atisha. While we have every respect to Atisha and his contribution, let's not think that he was teaching something unprecedented. Let us not think that he taught something that never existed in India, that he went to some foreign land and brought the teaching. All these fable stories are told as legends. People who don't have time to read and hear the old stories will be, of course, enchanted by them. So, when the Buddha knew that Anathapindika's name was ready to receive the essence of Buddha's teaching, Buddha then gave him the detailed teachings of how to attain the truth of cessation through the practicing the truth of the path. So in all, he gave the complete path teachings, which is the Four Noble Truth. Truth of suffering, truth of the origin, truth of cessation, and truth of the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So therefore we must understand the Four Noble Truth is the complete blueprint of the Buddha's teachings. And so the graduated path to enlightenment is an elaboration of the Four Noble Truths. We should not discuss, therefore, Four Noble Truths as an elementary teaching for school kids and then otherwise talk higher teachings to the other. No. The Four Noble Truths is a complete framework, complete structure, and a master plan of the whole path. After hearing the Buddha's discourse, Anathapindika understood and realized Buddha's doctrine and the Four Noble Truths. He attained the first noble stage of stream entry. So this is why people who realize the truth of suffering and the truth of origin and the truth of cessation, then they attain the stream entry. So do not regard the Four Noble Truths as some elementary introduction to Buddhism and then everything else is addition to that. No, it is the Four Noble Truths itself. That is the whole framework of it. And then he attained the dustless, stainless Dharma eye, seeing the dependently arising and impermanent nature of all things. So Anathapindika basically saw, he had the truth of seeing. We can call it Mahayanistically path of seeing, He saw the truth. You don't enter the stream entry unless you enter into the stream of seeing the truth of suffering and truth of origin, truth of the cessation, truth of the path. So, as a stream enterer, Anathapindika gained unshakable confidence with wisdom in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as well as the unbroken, perfect practice of one's self-discipline, pleasing the noble ones. So having, this was a very, 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 very profitable visit than any of his other business trips, So a businessman goes to visit his brother-in-law and he meet the enlightened one and hear the teachings, And so therefore, now he wanting to see the Buddha again and to learn more of the Buddha's doctrine. Anathapindika then requested Buddha and invited the Buddha and his order of monks for a next day to a meal next day in his brother-in-law's house, which the Buddha accepted. So there was already the plan was ahead. He was coming, but in the meantime, Anathapindika sort of jumped into saying, "Can I invite you to my brother's-in-laws?" Maybe Buddha would have said he already did. That part is not mentioned in the story anyway. So everything is working as well. So inviting someone over, have a good discussion over a meal, these sort of things. You meet, you have to do a meeting, magic meeting, And then following the offer of the alms to the Buddha at his brother-in-law's home, And all the monks and at his brother Anathapindika asked the Buddha whether he can build a monastery in his hometown, Shravasti, and so that he can offer it to the Buddha and his order monks to come and reside there to do meditation. And he invited Buddha to visit Shravasti because Shravasti is quite northwest, north of India, and Magadha is north but northeast towards near Calcutta. And so Buddha accepted by saying, enlightened one and his order of monks love peaceful places away from noise. And then the Anathapindika was extremely happy and that the Buddha has accepted his offer to build a monastery. He quickly returned to Shravasti and went looking for a suitable block of land. And when he did, he found a quiet, peaceful park for the Buddha to reside. Was also accessible for the citizens of the city to visit. And he realized when he looked at who owned this piece of land, it belonged to the king's prince, King Prasenajit's son, a prince called Jeta. The prince was not interested in selling his park. When Anathapindika kept insisting on buying the park, he said that if Anathapindika could cover the park with gold coins, then only he would sell, believing that Anathapindika will not be able to do it. Anathapindika accepted the price and offered to cover the park with gold coins. But Prince declined it, saying he did not mean it. He says that's just a joke. How could ever we engage in business by covering a park with gold coins? And however, through arbitration, because Anathapindika said, you should honor your word. You said it so. Now I'll bring all my gold. I will cover your park. And so through arbitration, the prince had to agree to sell it. And Anathapindika arranged to cover the park with gold coins from his vast wealth. When the gold coins worth 18 million that had been brought were all laid on the park, there was a patch of land near the main gate that was not covered. There was not enough gold. And causing Anathapindika to arrange as if he could have to get more gold, more coins. However, impressed with his enthusiasm and determination and generosity, Prince Jeta offered to donate that part of the park and also to build a wall and a gate to the main entrance. So, everything is working now. Anathapindika then is said to have spent another 18 million gold coins in building and refurbishing the Jetavana. So the monastery is called Jetavana, means grove of the Prince Jeta, consisting of living rooms, dining hall, storerooms, toilets, wells providing water, meeting halls, ponds, parks, walkways. So the whole construction of the monastery was completed. Then Anathapindika invited the Buddha. Buddha sent Shariputra well in ahead to inspect and assist the planning and building of the monastery. So anyway, when the building was finished, he invited Buddha and order monks to visit Shravasti. Then Anathapindika donated the monastery, dedicating it to the community of Sangha and 4 quarters, present and future. He donated the whole park and monastery to the Buddha, to the Sangha in the future. If you go today, it's still there. It's still the park and still the kind of ruins. Although they are all ruins, but you can see it's incredibly vast area. In the Buddhist scripture, whenever the Buddha is delivering this teaching, it always talk about place and people, and you will always hear the Jetavana monastery, the path that is offered by Anathapindika. And it mentions the Buddha's resident at the time, delivering those particular sutras, particular discourses. And they usually call Jetavana Anathapindika se arame. So, which means the Jetavana Anathapindika's monastery. Because it's named after the donor, named after the benefactor. It's incredible, really. Of course, benefactor's generosity and the story of that being the originally owned by Prince Jeta, So you can see how people's wealth, people with wealth, lay people with wealth, when their heart is to allow, they can support the Sangha. So you can see the role of the layman was to provide food and shelter and requisites for the Sangha. Without that, Sanghas will not be able to practice. Because Sanghas are only living on alms, and even if they may find alms from the ordinary people, but they have no place to gather. So you can't really practice in forests. You can call forest monastery, but even in the forest there are monasteries. They are not forest dwellers. They are in the forest. They are monastery built by lay people. When they are inspiring Sangha, ordained Sanghas, generous layman appears. It's a nature. It's almost like when there is a devotion, inspiration, the money comes, no problem. So in the modern world, we have few sort of disgruntled Sangha members who think they should be supported as if they have a bit of right, and so. But they are not themselves able to live a good example as a monastic. How could the lay people be so easily forthcoming? In the established Buddhist community, you never see monastics complaining they are not supported, because they are always supported. You can see the monastic individuals in the established Buddhist organization like Sri Lanka or Thailand or Burmese. They have their even if there's only half a dozen Buddhist families, they're all rostered to offer food, and they have no problem finding people to offer dana for the monastics and give them a place to sleep or stay or study or practice. So that's never has been the problem. So the role of the lay people are to provide. So as a result of him donating the Jetavana monastery to Buddha, he continued to now be the main benefactor and patron in every way possible. Anathapindika continued to support monks living there and with their requisites of food, robes, medicine, and other requirements. He also undertook the responsibility of maintaining the building, gardens, using his own workforce. Every day, hundreds of monks, either resident in Jetavana monastery or visiting from outside, visited his house, who will offer food and other requisites. His home just became like an open restaurant, which is all free, no charges. So it's interesting. It is believed that King Prasenajit was so inspired by his citizen Anathapindika, and order monks became generous donors himself. Later on, King Prasenajit also became very, very influenced to offer the Sangha. Similar to the chief disciples Buddha, such as Shariputra, Moggallana, Kashyapa, and Ananda, so these are all celebrated monastics, one has to have made an aspiration in a past life to become chief benefactor of the Buddha. So this means, what is the past life connection of Anathapindika to the Buddha as there is a past life connection of Shariputra, of Moggalaputra, of Mahakashyapa, and Ananda to the Buddha. Buddha told this in various stories, So all the Buddhist sutras are very interesting because they tell you all these details. It is also recorded in the Buddhist sutra that in a previous birth during the time of Sammasambuddha named Padumuttara, Anathapindika was a householder. He heard the Buddha speaking about the Buddha's chief benefactor who was foremost in generosity. It created interest in him to become one, and he made the aspiration to be the chief benefactor in the future Buddha. So he made a prayer that, such a man who did, even though he couldn't do it in that, he made a prayer that may I be able to be the chief benefactor of the future Buddha. He continued to perform meritorious actions since he made the aspiration, was then born as a householder during the time of Buddha and fulfilled his aspiration. Anathapindika visited the Jetavana monastery every day. When the Buddha was a resident there, he could visit 2 or 3 times a day to homage to Buddha, to bring food, to bring all the things and offer to do whatever they need to do, and always visiting 2-3 times. He was so dear to the Buddha that even when he visited, he would not ask any question from the Buddha, believing it would be trouble and cause tiredness to the Buddha. He wouldn't bother to ask any questions, If a Buddha delivered any discourse spontaneous, he would listen, and on other occasions he may speak in relation to some event in his life, hoping to get response from Buddha. Buddha used to seek Anathapindika's help whenever there was an issue in relation to the lay community. Jetavana monastery, donated by Anathapindika, became favorite resident of Buddha, and recorded that Buddha loved it so much that he spent 25 rainy season retreat. That's almost nearly half of his monastic life. So you can see when generous benefactors provide that, then that creates causes, and then all the teachings and sutras were delivered there. And next is the story of the origin of Ananda Bodhi. This is a very famous Bodhi tree. Whenever the Buddha happened to be away from Jetavana, either a spiritual helping person in need or residing in another monastery, Anathapindika and other devotees who visited Jetavana hoping to see and pay respect to the Buddha were very disappointed because they say, there's no Buddha, where did he go? Hence, Anathapindika inquired from Venerable Ananda, chief attendant Buddha, whether he could find a shrine at Jetavana so that the devotees could pay homage when the Buddha was away. Even the Buddha was away, they need a shrine, because remember that people don't like to build a shrine when Buddha was alive. But when he was absent, they said, we need a shrine to go and think. And Venerable Ananda informed the Buddha about it, and it is recorded that Buddha has described 3 types of objects that can be used as a part of shrine to venerate Buddha. They were either a relic from the Buddha's body, Sharira, after his passing away, an object used by the Buddha, such as his robe or alms bowl, or whatever Buddha used, an umbrella or whatever, and a statue or an image representing the Buddha. So the Buddha himself said they can do that, or worship a Buddha image or something like that, his clothes or robes or bowls while Buddha was away. As the Buddha was still alive, the first was not applicable. They can't have a remain of the Buddha. And the statue and the image of Buddha seem to have appeared only a few centuries following the Buddha's passing away. Now, this is I don't know whether there is a story, however, that it is in very Jetavana, when Buddha went to visit his mother in the heaven of 33 realms for 3 months, people requested Buddha saying, look, we won't let you go. We will miss you so much. And then Buddha said, in that case, you can worship my image. And then they called the local sculptor, and he made a sandalwood Buddha image. And Buddha said, you guys can worship this while I'm away. So Buddha's statue appeared during that time, and people worship that Buddha image, and I'm sure the Anathapindika would be among them worship that. You know what happened? After 3 months, when Buddha returned, everybody left the image and went to rush to see the Buddha. And the statue also walked with the crowd towards the Buddha. And then they realized that if those who have faith, the statue is as much as human as the statue itself can be. So therefore the belief in the statue being same as the Buddha was spread like a wildfire, because people heard that Buddha image they thought was only second to the Buddha. When they left the statue and went to see the Buddha, the statue walked along with everybody. So that shows that the first robot Buddha, first robot Buddha, I don't know, maybe I can't use the word robot Buddha. First Buddha image actually walked and moved. You know, people, Tibet, we talk about statues speaking and statues shedding tears and so on. But statue walking is not heard of. It's unheard of. But it happened in Shravasti. Anyway, so you can see the proliferation of the Buddha images in the world, the belief about that. Anyway, the obvious choice then was the object used by Buddha, and they decided to obtain a cutting of Bodhi tree from Bodh Gaya, under which the Buddha meditated and gained enlightenment. So this is the kind of the mystery that Theravadins, and particularly Sri Lankans don't think they have a Buddhist center unless there's a Bodhi tree. So they always try to get a Bodhi tree sapling and try to plant it. And this belief came from the belief that when the Buddha was not there, we should have a Bodhi tree, because the Bodhi tree is the one that gave birth to the Buddha's enlightenment. So therefore, Bodhi tree is very important. So that's why Arhat Moggallanaputra, using his psychic power, had brought a cutting of Bodhi tree from Bodh Gaya, which was then planted by Anathapindika near the main gate of Jetavana monastery. So if you go to Jetavana monastery, there are lots of trees they think is that tree, you know. Whether it is or not, we don't know. We don't even know whether the tree in Bodh Gaya is that tree. Of course, that tree can't be 2,000 years old. Come on, give me a break. Of course, the one tree dies, another tree grows, so the reincarnation of tree happens, you know. But yet the tree is so put with a chain and put in Bodh Gaya. You can see there, you can hardly get near to it because everybody wants to go there and sit under it. It is said that the request of Venerable Ananda, Buddha meditated under that Bodhi tree in Jetavana all night in order to consecrate it. Amazing. Buddha was so amazing. He sat under the tree to bless the tree. It came to be known as Ananda Bodhi, because anybody who sat under the tree became Ananda, means joyful. They all become joyful that they sat under the tree. And there is still a Bodhi tree at Jetavana monastery representing that original tree, visited by Buddhists from all over the world to pay homage to that very Ananda Bodhi tree. So this is the story. You know, it's very important to know what prompted the worship of the Bodhi tree was because Buddha was absent. Okay, and then those Bodhi leaves became the main kind of paraphernalia people brought from Bodh Gaya and gave it to their people in China or Tibet as the most sacred one. Some of these days, you can see the dry Bodhi leaves printed with Buddha's face on it. And some has seed syllables on it. You can see how the religious icons and symbols become deified. Deification. Lotus flowers and Buddha's footprints and so on. And now let's talk about the little bit about how the transformation of Anathapindika's daughter-in-law. His daughter-in-law was very difficult girl. Yeah, remember we talked briefly. Sujata. Sujata, the younger sister of Vishaka, the chief benefactress of Buddha, was married to Anathapindika's son Kala and lived in their house. She had a difficult personality, was not respectful or caring towards her husband or parents-in-law, showed no interest in generosity, religious activities, or venerating even the Buddha. She was cruel to her servants, created conflict wherever she was. One day, as the Buddha was giving discourse following the almsgiving at Anathapindika's house, the discourse was disrupted by a noisy commotion in the house caused by none other than Sujata, shouting and scolding to the servants. Buddha stopped the discourse, asked her to be called to see the Buddha. When she arrived, the Buddha asked her which of the 7 types of wives she was, and when she asked who they were, Buddha described 7 types of wives as recorded in the Anguttara Nikaya Sutra called Sujata Sutra. This sutra is named after her. If you wanted to find 7 types of wives, it's under Sujata Sutra. The first 3 types of wives will lead to unhappiness, while the next 4 lead to happiness. They are destructive wife, thievish wife, mistress wife, motherly wife, sisterly wife, companion wife, housemaid wife. So out of this, when the Buddha described the characteristic of each of these 7 types of wives, she recognized her weakness and transformed herself, informing the Buddha she was going to be like a housemaid wife thereafter. So she also became a devoted disciple of Buddha. So Buddha, people usually don't know their flaws. If someone like the Buddha point out and what they should drop as a wife or husband, and she can adopt as a new wife with this kind of characters, and the Buddha transform her instantly. Anyway, now no matter how wealthy you are, however generous you are, in the end you lose them, don't you? However healthy and strong body you are, you die, don't you? So this is a story of the loss of Anathapindika's wealth and life. At the time that Anathapindika built and donated Jetavana monastery, he was known to have been the wealthiest merchant in the whole Shravasti. However, in due course, he lost the rest of his assets he possessed due to a number of reasons. Through his goodwill, he lent vast sums of money to his friends without investigating the ability to repay. Eventually, they did not pay the debts and gold treasure, and he had securely deposited was flushed away into the sea by a flash flood. Once the wealthiest merchant in the region became a poor person. However, he continued to offer alms in order of monks and poor, though in a very more modest way. It was during this time the Buddha delivered a sermon named Velama Sutta to Anathapindika, which is recorded in the Anguttara Nikaya Sutra. One day Anathapindika visited Buddha. He was asked by the Buddha, "Are alms given by your householder?" Anathapindika replied, "Yes, Lord, alms are given by my family, but only consists of broken rice and sour gruel." Now he's not able to offer those wealthy meals, nice meals. Then, to reassure him, Buddha stated that it was the manner of offering rather than the quality of food that mattered in giving alms that resulted in positive consequences. So Anathapindika was a little bit sad because he can only offer broken rice gruel, Buddha said, no, it doesn't really matter what you offer, but in what manner, how you offer. But whether one gives coarse or choice alms, if one gives them with respect, thoughtfully, with one's own hand, gives things that are not leftovers, and with the belief in the result of action, then wherever he is reborn as a result of his having given these alms, his mind will turn to enjoyment of fine food, clothes, vehicles, and fine objects of sense objects. His children, wife, family, and will obey him, listen and pay attention to him. So it is recorded that Anathapindika eventually recovered his wealth due to an intervention by a celestial being who arranged for the debtors to repay the money and also recover his lost treasure. So there's always an up and down in everybody's wealth and fame and reputation, and that definitely happened in the life of Anathapindika. So Anathapindika is mentioned in many Buddhist sutras. In addition to Avelamana Sutra described above, there are a number of discourses in both Pali and Sanskrit, uh, um, as well as by Arhashariputra and Ananda, and in relation to Anathapindika. These personalities are all mentioned. Most of the discourse by Buddha was delivered on his own accord, except one which was delivered in response to question from Anathapindika. In a particular discourse named Dekhineya Sutra of the Anguttara Nikaya, Anathapindika asked the Buddha who were worthy of receiving gifts, and Buddha stated that those who are liberated and those who are on the path of liberation are worthy of receiving gifts. In the Dethiya Anathapindika Sutra, Venerable Ananda visited at the request of Anathapindika, who happened to be seriously sick. Now, Anathapindika was very sick. The Venerable Ananda gave a discourse on the four limbs or qualities of the four in a stream enterer, describing the benefit of possessing them. Householder, for the learned, this noble disciple, endowed with these four things, there is no dread, no terror in the hereafter, no fear of death in him. They are unthinkable faith in the awakened Buddha, unshakable faith in the Buddha's teaching, Dhamma, unshakable faith in the Buddhist Sangha, and unbroken perfect discipline that is pleasing to the enlightened one. After listening to the discourse, Anathapindika stated that he already possessed these four qualities, and then Ananda said, "It is a gain for you, householder. It is good gain for you, householder. You have declared the fruit of stream winners." So in the Dethiya Sutra of Anguttara Nikaya, during a visit of a group of wanderers belonging to other religious texts, Anathapindika very cleverly and successfully presented his religious view, and which showed his broad view and knowledge into the Buddha's doctrine. When asked for his views, he stated, "Venerable sirs, whatever has been brought into being is fabricated, willed, dependently originated, and is inconstant. Whatever is inconstant is stress. Whatever is stress is not me, is not what I am, is not myself. Having seen these well with right discernment, as it is all actually present, I also discern the higher escape from it as it actually is present." When this was said, the wanderers are said to have fell silent, abashed, sitting with their shoulders drooping, their heads down, brooding, at a loss for words. When he subsequently reported this discussion to the Buddha and left, Buddha made the following statement to the monks. "Monks, even a monk who has long penetrated Dharma in this doctrine discipline would do well to refute the wanderers of other persuasion with the Dharma periodically in just the same way as Anathapindika, the householder, has done." So the Buddha praised his householder disciple. He says even householders can can very eloquently discuss this. So now the death of Anathapindika. Everyone comes to die. Anathapindika became ill with severe pain. So don't think that even those who have attained arhathood can escape death. Death is still inescapable. So Anathapindika fell ill and severe pain. So he has illness and going to die. Send a message to Shariputra to visit him out of sympathy. So this shows the date that actually Anathapindika died before Shariputra. Shariputra died before the Buddha. So that shows Anathapindika died earlier than Shariputra. Because Shariputra was his favorite after the Buddha, because he visited him first to help him build the monastery. So Shariputra, accompanied by Ananda, visited Anathapindika after inquiring about his health, delivered a discourse that is recorded in the Anathapindika Vada Sutra of the Madhyamika Nikaya. In the discourse, Arhat Shariputra advised Anathapindika not to cling to his six sense organs, six sense objects, six consciousness, six types of sense-based contact, six types of sense-based feeling, six elements, and so on. So basically, Shariputra gave instructions to Anathapindika not to grasp to any of these that is taught in the Abhidharma. Having listened to the discourse attentively, Anathapindika wept and shed tears, stating that he's never listened to such deep teaching before. When Shariputra informed him that this type of teaching is not generally taught to lay disciples, because this is Abhidharma teachings, he pleaded that it would be delivered to them, as there are some lay disciples who are wise enough to understand it. Because otherwise you don't tell them there is no eye, there's no ear, there's no nose, all these things, lay people can't fathom it. But Anathapindika was well developed enough to hear that. Soon after Arhat Shariputra and Venerable Ananda left, Anathapindika passed away, and he was born as a god in the Tushita heaven. It is recorded that during the same night, the deity Anathapindika visited the Jetavana monastery to pay homage to the Buddha. Even as a deceased person who was born in the Tushita heaven, he came back to pay homage to the Buddha. Anathapindika, as chief lay male disciple and the main benefactor, remained loyal and dear to the Buddha until the very end of his life. Anathapindika became legacy of the Buddha Dharma for his amazing dana and generosity, which is a noble example that every Buddhist follow to practice dana if they can, to support their sangha and the activities of the Dharma. So you can see today the story of Anathapindika is directly related, influenced by the Buddha. Even though he was generous before he met the Buddha, there are lots of people who are generous. But remember, Buddha said, it's not the quality of the thing you give, even the broken rice. It's with how you give it and with what attitude you give it. That's more important than the material, So of course, this kind of teaching was not possible for those who haven't found the vision, the divine eye of the Dharma. So Anathapindika is not only Arhat, is a great pillar of the Dharma, even though he predeceased Buddha and Shariputra, but he became very famous. If you go to Sharavasti today, you can see the whole ruins and the very palace that he bought and turned into a spiritual palace, and where all the teachings were given. And all the Dharma scriptures we have today were taught there. This is amazing legacy. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm sure you will remember Anathapindika's story now. Thank you, everyone. That's all we have time for. Thank you for your listening so hard and being very, very diligent. giving your whole attention. Thank you. So with which we will do the dedication of merits. Whatever merit I have, mehobe begas de levas Jehoda Maya Najiji Courage Manju Shine Asama Tabara de Lava Follow it Oh the Hezambo I shall get all the matter Meda Hexalam Bodhi Jeda Tebe Verena Yeranza Ver has been bombarding freely with the generation. Thank you, everyone.